Everyone came to her wedding, but not to bless her. They came to watch her fall. She was the daughter of one of the richest men in the city, and today she was marrying a servant. The guests whispered, "She's lost her mind. How could she marry a man who once cleaned her floors?" But what they didn't know was that the man they laughed at would one day teach them the real meaning of love. In a world where love was measured by wealth, Anaya, the daughter of a powerful businessman, had everything: beauty, luxury, and a name that opened every door. But when she chose to marry Ravi, the humble servant who had served her family for years, the world turned against her. People whispered behind her back, laughed at her, and called her foolish. But what they didn't know was that her servant had a heart richer than gold. Ravi came from a small village. He worked day and night in Anaya's house, never complaining, never expecting more than his daily bread. He would fix broken lamps, water the flowers, and make sure the house shone before sunrise. Anaya noticed something different about him: a quiet kindness, a sense of peace that even the richest man in the room didn't have. While others looked down on him, she saw the way he helped the old cook carry heavy pots, or how he stayed up all night when the gardener fell sick. One rainy evening, when her car broke down on a lonely road, it was Ravi who walked miles through the storm to bring help. That night, something in her heart changed. At the family dinner table, the silence was thick with tension. Her father's voice boomed across the room. "You can't be serious. Marry a servant. Do you know what people will say?" Anaya, calm but firm, replied, "Let them say what they want. He may be poor, but his heart is pure." Her mother wept silently, a portrait of despair. The city's elite families mocked her relentlessly. Newspapers printed sensational headlines. "The billionaire's daughter marries her servant." The whispers at the wedding were cruel and loud. "She's ruined her life." But Anaya walked down the aisle with her head held high, her hand finding and holding Ravi's, which trembled slightly in hers. She had made her choice, not for them, but for her. The mansion was gone. The luxury vanished into thin air. They moved into a small, modest house on the outskirts of town. But for the first time in a long, long time, Anaya smiled with genuine peace. Ravi, no longer just a servant, became her everything. He cooked for her, washed clothes, and left a single fragrant flower by her bed every morning. When she fell ill, he worked extra hours, taking on any job he could find, never letting her miss her medicine. The neighbors who had initially gossiped began to whisper again, but this time with wonder. They saw the way Ravi looked at her, not as a servant looks at his master, but as if she were the entire world, the sun and the stars combined. Years passed. Life had a way of balancing the scales. Anaya's parents, once the titans of the city, lost their business. Their empire crumbled, and with it, their so-called friends. None of the rich families they had dined with came forward to help, but Ravi did. Without a second thought, he sold his old, battered motorbike, his only possession of value, and used the money to buy medicine for them. He stayed at their bedside for days, caring for them with the same quiet dedication he had always shown. Her father, once so proud and arrogant, looked at Ravi, his eyes filled with tears of regret. "I misjudged you, son," he whispered softly. "You're the richest man I've ever known." And so, we find them here, years later, sitting together under the very same tree where she first noticed his gentle soul. The sun dips behind the hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. "They used to laugh at me for marrying you," Anaya says, her smile radiant. Ravi takes her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Then let them laugh," he replies, "because you gave me a life worth living." And as the last light of day faded, The same people who once mocked her now whispered in awe, for they had witnessed what true love, pure and unconditional, really looked like. Love doesn't measure wealth, it measures the heart. It had been 5 years since Anaya, the daughter of a wealthy businessman, chose love over status, leaving everything behind for Ravi, a humble servant. Their life in a small village was simple, a world away from the luxury she had known, but it was filled with a peace that money could never buy. Every morning, the birds chirped outside their modest home, a gentle soundtrack to their quiet happiness. They had each other, and that was enough. Their love was a silent promise, a sanctuary they had built together. But the calm of their simple life was a fragile thing, and one morning, destiny, cruel and unforgiving, came knocking again. Ravi, with his ever-present smile, had started a small bicycle repair shop to support Anaya and her aging parents, who had come to live with them. His hands, though calloused, were gentle and skilled. He found joy in mending what was broken, a simple metaphor for the life he was building. Every morning, he would kiss Anaya goodbye and set off on his bicycle, his heart full of hope for the day ahead. He never imagined that the familiar road he traveled each day would become the setting for a life-altering tragedy. One fateful morning, the ordinary hum of traffic was shattered by the screech of tires and the sickening crunch of metal. A truck, its driver having lost control, barreled down the highway. In that split second, Ravi saw a small child freeze in its path. Without a thought for his own safety, he swerved, pushing the child out of harm's way. He was a hero in that moment. But heroism often comes at a terrible price. The truck hit him head-on. The scene dissolves into a blur of flashing ambulance lights and the sterile, hurried environment of a hospital. Doctors shout orders. Machines beep in a frantic, relentless rhythm. Each beep a fragile hold on life. The man who left home with a smile now lay broken and still, his future hanging by a thread. Anaya ran through the sterile white corridors of the hospital, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, her breath catching in her throat. The sounds of her own footsteps echoed the chaos in her mind. When she finally reached his room, the sight of Ravi, so still and pale, amidst a web of tubes and wires, shattered her world. "Ravi!" she cried, her voice breaking as she collapsed by his bedside. "Please, open your eyes. You can't leave me like this. You promised." The doctor's words were a cold, clinical blow, severe spinal injuries. He might never walk again. The whispers started again, just as they had 5 years ago. The same cruel voices, the same judgmental stares from people in her old life, echoed in the hospital hallways. She ruined her life for that man, they sneered, their words dripping with scorn. She threw away a fortune for a servant, and see what she got in return. It's karma. Their pity was a mask for their triumph. But Anaya didn't hear them. Her world had narrowed to the man in the bed, to the feel of his cold hand in hers. She tightened her grip, a silent vow passing between them. "You gave me a world of love when I had nothing but an empty title," she whispered, her tears falling onto his hand. "Now it's my turn to be your world." Days bled into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Ravi remained paralyzed, his spirit trapped in a body that wouldn't obey. The smile that once lit up his face was gone, replaced by a shadow of despair. But where his strength had failed, Anaya's grew. She became his rock, his hands, his feet, his unwavering hope. To pay for the mounting medical bills and expensive medicines, she sold the last remnants of her old life, the delicate gold jewelry her mother had given her. She, who had never known a day of labor, now cleaned houses, her hands raw and aching. At night, by the dim light of a single lamp, she stitched clothes for others, her needle flying as she fought to keep them afloat. The villagers who once respected her now looked on with a mixture of pity and contempt. They saw a princess brought low, cleaning floors and mending clothes. They laughed behind her back, but this time, their mockery didn't sting. Anaya would simply smile, a quiet, knowing smile. She had discovered a profound truth that their shallow world could never comprehend. Love isn't measured in moments of comfort and ease. It's forged in the fire of adversity, proven not in grand gestures, but in quiet, relentless sacrifice. One morning, Ravi woke to find her asleep in a chair by his bed. Her face etched with exhaustion, but peaceful. A faint smile on her lips, even in sleep. "Why?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Why do you do all this for me?" Anaya stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Because when I was broken," she murmured, her voice thick with sleep, "you were the one who put me back together. You didn't leave me either." With Anaya's unwavering love as his fuel, a flicker of the old Ravi returned. Her faith became his own. And then, slowly, miraculously, things began to change. It started with a twitch in his finger, a sensation in his toe. He began the grueling process of physical therapy, with Anaya as his constant coach and cheerleader. The doctors had called his chances of recovery impossible, a medical improbability. But love, they had failed to account for love. After months of painstaking effort, surrounded by Anaya's cheers, Ravi, supported by parallel bars, took his first shaky step, then another. The villagers who had once mocked him now gathered to watch, their whispers of scorn turning into gasps of awe. When he finally walked across the room unaided, they erupted in applause. They no longer saw a servant, they saw a hero, forged not just by saving a child, but by an unbreakable will to live for the woman who saved him. Years passed, the scars of their ordeal remained, but they were reminders of their strength, not their suffering. Ravi, now fully recovered, didn't return to repairing bicycles. He had a new purpose. With their modest savings and donations from people moved by their story, he opened a small school for the village's poorest children, offering them an education completely free of cost. He wanted to give them the one thing that could truly change their lives. Opportunity. At a city charity event where he and Anaya were invited as guests of honor, a reporter asked him why he dedicated his life to this cause. Ravi simply smiled, his gaze finding Anaya in the crowd. "Because when I had lost everything," he said, his voice clear and strong, "love gave it all back to me, and more. It's time I returned some of that light to the world." The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. Anaya and Ravi sat together under the same sprawling tree where their story first began. The world around them was quiet, peaceful. "They once mocked me for marrying a servant," Anaya said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "They said I had thrown my life away, but look at us now." Ravi took her hand, his touch as gentle as ever. "They mocked you," he replied, "because their eyes could only see status and money. They didn't know what real love, a love worth fighting for, truly looked like." And there they sat, the servant who became a hero, and the princess who found her true kingdom, not in a palace, but in a man's heart. They were a living testament that true love isn't about what you own or the titles you hold. It's about who you hold on to when the world tries to tear you apart, and whose hand you refuse to let go of, no matter the storm. When love is pure, even the deepest pain can find its purpose. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content that celebrates the power of the human spirit. We'll see you in the next one. Years had passed. Ravi and Anaya had built something far greater than wealth. A small school for poor children, where love and kindness were the only currency. Their lives were peaceful again, a quiet melody after the storm, but peace, as they knew, never lasts forever. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, a familiar sleek luxury car stopped outside the humble school gates. From it stepped Mr. Arjun, Anaya's cousin, the very same man who had once led the chorus of gossip against her, his words dripping with scorn. He looked around, his expression cold. "So this is where you live now? Among children?" Anaya, her voice as calm as a still lake, replied, "Yes, and among people who know what love means." Arjun's facade of arrogance crumbled. "Our company is collapsing," he confessed, his voice strained. "Investors are leaving. Uncle is sick. We need Ravi's help. You were right about him all along." Ravi, who had been standing nearby, looked stunned, but his eyes held no triumph, only compassion. Ravi returned to the mansion he once served in. Not as a worker this time, but as their last hope. The same grand halls that once echoed with laughter and music were now silent and empty, haunted by the ghosts of their past pride. Anaya's father, his voice weak and frail, reached for Ravi's hand. "Son, I failed you. I failed my daughter. I taught her pride, not love." Ravi gently squeezed his hand. "No, father. You taught her strength. Pride broke, but love survived." He promised to help them, not with money. He had none to give, but with what he knew best: compassion and unity. Ravi used his small school as a hub for rebuilding the community from the ground up. He taught the poor villagers how to build small sustainable businesses. He showed them how to turn their skills into livelihoods. Anaya, by his side, organized women's groups, empowering them to become leaders. The same villagers who once mocked him for being a servant now worked alongside him. Their respect, earned not by wealth, but by his unwavering integrity. His honesty attracted donors, NGOs, and soon the family business began to rise from its ashes, this time built on a foundation of fairness and empathy. At the grand reopening ceremony, a newspaper headline captured the incredible journey: "The servant who saved a city." 10 years later, the school had become a beacon of light for the forgotten souls of the city. Children who once begged on the streets now wore clean uniforms, their eyes shining with dreams for the future. During the school's 10th anniversary celebration, the mayor came forward with a surprise announcement. "From this day forward," he declared, his voice ringing with emotion, "this institution will be known as the Ravi Foundation for Love and Education." The hall erupted in applause. Ravi turned to Anaya, his eyes full of tears. "This was never my dream, Anaya," he whispered softly. "It was ours." Anaya smiled back, her own tears glistening. "And now," she said, "the world knows your heart. Years may pass, faces may change, but some stories remain timeless. The world once mocked her for marrying a servant, but in the end, they bowed their heads before the love that never, ever gave up." Ravi held Anaya's hand as they watched the children playing in the field, their laughter floating on the evening breeze. "You gave me a name, Anaya," Ravi said, his voice filled with gratitude. "But more than that, you gave me a reason to live." Anaya leaned her head on his shoulder. "And you gave me a reason to believe in forever." Years turned into decades. The world changed, cities grew, faces faded, but the little school at the edge of the town still stood tall, a testament to their love. Above its entrance, a simple sign read, "The House of Love, founded by Ravi and Anaya." Inside the classroom, photographs hung on the wall, pictures of smiling children, and of two souls who built hope out of hardship. Anaya, now older, would often sit beneath that same old tree, the very one where their story began. Sometimes, she closed her eyes and could still hear his laughter. Carried by the gentle wind, Ravi had passed away peacefully years ago, his hand held tightly in hers, whispering his last words, "Don't cry, Anaya. We'll meet again where love never ends." Every year the children of the foundation place flowers before his statue in the school garden, not because he was rich or powerful, but because he taught them that even a humble servant can serve a love greater than any king. The soft wind blew, and Anaya smiled through her tears, whispering to the sky, "You were right, Ravi. They mocked us once. But now they tell our story to teach others what love really means." And somewhere beyond the clouds, two souls walk hand in hand again. No longer servant and mistress. No longer bound by the world's judgment. Just Ravi and Anaya. Eternal lovers, whose story proved one simple, beautiful truth. True love doesn't need the world's approval. Only two hearts that never give up. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of love and hope. We'll see you in the next video.